Okay, here we go. Just doing a couple checks here. I see people are checking in. Awesome. Okay. Hello, good evening, and happy Halloween to you all. I'm Jacob Meyer. I'm the therapist at Integrated Health Systems. I thought I'd come with a little cowboy theme this Halloween with 6 hours after high noon. All you lonesome buckaroos and buckettes looking to find regulation in relation. 3 tips to building supportive emotional regulation strategies. My name is Jacob Meyer. I'm an LSW. I'm an LAC. I'm the therapist, psychotherapist at Integrated Health Systems. And tonight we're going to talk a little bit about finding our way to regulate with ourselves, but also really extending that conversation to how can we regulate in relation to others? How can we start to understand that human beings are really hardwired to be able to connect in with another person, to find a sense of safety there. We are interdependent creatures, and it is extremely beneficial if we have those safe people in close proximity to us that we can go to with distress. But before we get started on that, I try to keep this to about 45 minutes at the max. If you find me going over time or anything, it's okay to exit. This will be posted the following day. And I forgot to post the Calendly link. Excuse me, I'll just have to pull that up really quick. And the Calendly link will allow you to go ahead and schedule a consultation for you or a loved one. Let me just type in here. Okay, and so you can get a free 30-minute free consultation if you have any questions or concerns, if you have family members in mind, if you feel like someone that you love might want to come in and talk, or if that's something they would be open to. We love being able to connect with people and give them great information. There's no strings attached to that consultation as well. If you have any questions, just go ahead and throw it in the chat box there for you. I try to answer questions more in between the slides because sometimes I get pretty tangential and I sort of struggle to refine my place. So I find it's best to address things in between the slides so I can just keep things as cohesive as possible. So we're going to start moving forward here. But first, I'll introduce myself a little bit more. Again, my name is Jacob Meyer. I'm an LSW. So what that means is that I am a sort of general psychotherapist, sort of like bread and butter type of person, sort of trained to deal with it all, but I found some specialization in working with addiction and trauma, and also chronic illness, traumatic brain injuries, autoimmune disorders at Integrated Health Systems as well. And I really got into this field. I did my graduate program at Loyola University of Chicago, and moved out here and started practicing after that. I started working in addiction pretty immediately there, and worked there for about 2 years, 2.5 years. Hard to time sort of slips away from you a little bit in those dates, but there I earned the credential of a licensed addiction counselor. I do have that specialty and specialized classes associated with that, and all the time and the hours put into that. So what addiction has really taught me, because my LSW is more of like this general like therapist credential, but going into the field of addiction, it really is a trial by fire in terms of working with people with opiate addiction, benzodiazepine addiction, more commonly known as like something like Xanax, alcohol, marijuana, sort of you name it. I've sort of treated it. And these were people dealing with some pretty severe addictions. This was at an outpatient methadone clinic. And what that sort of taught me a lot about is how do we deal with process? How do we create slow and logical change over time? And also, why does this start to happen? Why do people start reaching for something outside of themselves to help them regulate? Sort of how people will go to something external when their internal regulation strategies or their felt sense of safety in their relational environment is very, very disrupted by being in a relationally unsafe environment, experiencing a lot of trauma in their past, things of this nature. So dealt with a lot of high need patients there. Really was a great experience, and it really prepared me for my work at Integrated Health Systems because in dealing with a lot of chronic illnesses or traumatic brain injury, this is simply a stress on the body. This is a stress on the body that's going to start us, that's going to make us start to compensate with that stress. When we cannot compensate for that stress anymore, we will start decompensating. And so that's why Dr. Stedman has brought me in to work with the rest of the team there, because they see so many patients walking in that door with symptoms of anxiety from the future, feeling depressed, feeling really trapped, feeling pretty hopeless. A lot of people who have done a ton of doctor shopping, they've been called disingenuous, even outright being called a liar by medical professionals. Really just not getting that care that they need, really having a lot of doctor fatigue, having a lot of stress, losing out on a lot of hope, and really wondering, am I going to get my life back? And what will my life look like if I'm able to get something back? So, to me, as a clinician, it's very normal for someone to experience levels of distress with that, to feel anxiety, to feel depression. And so, I'm sort of taking all of I've learned um, through working in addiction, working with that very high need population, and coming to another high need population. And people need to be able to work, people need to know what's going on with their body, and people need a comprehensive plan to be able to get out. So I love working with this integrated approach. I love working with Dr. Perry, Dr. Stedman, really being able to talk shop about the patients, really being able to learn things from each other, and really being able to give that integrated approach and that comprehensive care plan there. And so, just a little bit about me and my background, and still learning all the time, and just really enjoying my time at Integrated Health Systems. So, sort of moving on from about me into sort of the overview of this webinar today. We're going to cover these three main points of regulating in relation. We're going to talk a little bit about self-regulation, but I think mostly we need to talk about that this is going to be more focused on how do we regulate with another person? Why is that beneficial? What are some practical steps in finding out what do I need? What is the capabilities of the other person, and being able to clearly and explicitly, communicate our needs and the expectation for these moments, so we have sort of a system that we can create and sort of put in place. So if we're carrying a lot of stress, or if a really negative surprise happens, we sort of know what to do. We know this is okay. We know the terrain already. All we need to do is move through it. And so regulating in relation in our relational environment is extremely important. I'll often say to patients coming in that are dealing, let's say they're dealing with a pretty considerable stress, but let's say they have two really positive relationships with their parents still. That's something that a lot of people struggle with. It's not as common as you think to have a very open level of communication with your parents. Maybe they have a very supportive spouse, very supportive friend groups. And you'd be surprised at sometimes how much people are able to cope with without a therapist. And this is because the relational environment is sort of able to respond to the stress that they're working with. The person is seen, people care, people are showing empathy and compassion, and people are given, not only a lot of empathy and space in that, they're able to regulate through that, but they're also given, a lot of help in those times. People really care and want to step in, and that can make a massive difference with our mental health. If we are seen, if we don't have to hide anything, it can really help us mitigate a lot of symptoms of anxiety and depression. So that's our natural environment. And entering into the therapeutic relationship is more of a artificial container, an artificial relationship. It's very real in many ways, but this is a relationship we're crafting for a specific purpose, for the purpose of the betterment of this person's mental health and their goal attainment. So just a little bit about regulating our environments and how that can impact us, but I'll move into sort of starting to ask ourselves a lot of questions. There's going to be a lot of questions I want those who are here right now and are going to be listening later as well, of to ask themselves while we're going through this presentation, because we can start mapping this sort of place in our mind and sort of maybe coming into some of those hotspots of, ooh, who can I go to right now? What is actually helpful for me? What are the person's limits? I might not know this. And so this can give you some good clues and a start. And if you feel like, wow, this is a lot, or maybe I don't have someone I want to go to, maybe I don't want to put my stuff in my relational environment. Maybe it would be good for me to talk to someone like me in integrated health systems, to have that specific person that, hey, I can come and bring this to this person, so I maybe don't have to bring all my stuff in to my family or friends. And so what I want people to start asking themselves is that question of what is helpful for me, what helps me find safety, and what has worked in the past, to help them start understanding how have I been able to maybe regulate myself in the past. Do I notice maybe after I take a nap, I don't feel so anxious anymore or sad? Maybe I feel calmer. Maybe I feel more rested. Maybe after I eat some food, maybe after I regulate my blood sugar, maybe I feel better. Maybe I just feel lonely. Maybe I feel like really disconnected and just need to connect with another person. Maybe I just feel really tired. Maybe I feel irritated and just need somebody to understand that. What is helpful for me in terms of what someone can understand, and also what helps me find some safety. What are those cues that I'm looking for, and what has worked for me in the past before? And sort of moving on to the second major point tonight is, who is helpful? Who's this trusted person I can go to? Is that person my spouse? Some in some spousal situations, some partnerships, people, they might not want to go to that deeper level. They might be uncomfortable with some of that content, or they might feel pretty overwhelmed with that. Or is that trusted person my mom or dad? Is that trusted person a really close friend, or a longtime best friend? And what is helpful about that person, to ask ourselves, why does that person make me feel safe? What are those cues that I know, like, oh, that really calmed me down afterwards? Is it what they say? A lot of times it's just how people hold the space. It's how people are open, they're curious, they're non-judgmental, they're not critical. Just to notice, what we want in that moment. Maybe sometimes we're searching for a solution as well. Much more uncommon from what I see, but sometimes we just need a solution, and we might need to be able to ask for that. And to understand, okay, so what are my limits in my self-regulation in relation to myself? But also, what are the limits of another person? I do this stuff day in and day out. I help to regulate people's nervous systems. I help regulate people's emotions. And this is a big passion of mine. This is something I went to school to do. This is something I work really hard at every day. But not everyone is really like that. A lot of people can get quickly overwhelmed, or a lot of people can get a little scared about emotional content. Some people just feel uncomfortable because they don't know what to say. What is this person's what are the limits of this person? What are the expectations? When can you come to this person? All good things to know. We'll explore a little bit more as we move on here. So, just a general overview of this, and we'll dive a little bit into what is helpful in terms of our self-regulation. And so, a lot of this is going to be question based tonight. Just to give people this sort of jumping off point. It might be helpful to have like something like a pen and paper next to you, or something like, just to be able to mentally note, where are there any hotspots that are coming up with these questions? Can I answer these questions? Will it take a longer time for me? And so, to start us off here, how can we understand our emotional health? How can we identify our emotional health? And to begin that, a good question is, well, what are the major issues in my life right now? What am I dealing with? I've been talking a lot on the radio and these webinars with articles, like, hey, like, people are really struggling, with this pandemic. People are really struggling in this new normal. We have all been under a lot of stress, not only from the pandemic, all the changes, the changes in the news cycle, all the social unrest that's going on. People are losing their homes, people are losing loved ones. We all know someone who's affected by this. And Colorado is going through some historic wildfires here, so people are losing their homes as well. A lot of things are going on, but to ask ourselves this question, to zero in, what are the major issues in my life going on right now? How are they sort of affecting me? What happens when I think about these issues? Do I feel overwhelmed very quickly? Do I feel like I can create a plan for myself? Do I feel like I can regulate myself in the face of this? Um, and we can just ask ourselves another question of what happens when I get stressed in general? Do I withdraw from people? Do I need to disconnect to feel safe? Do I go towards people? Do I have an expectation that someone's going to listen to me right now? Am I not met a lot of times with a sense of reciprocation and being seen and validated in those vulnerable moments? Do I maybe start reaching for another substance, like maybe a beer, maybe a glass of wine, maybe a drink after work or something like that? What do I start to do when I feel stressed in general? And I just want people to be curious about that. Maybe go back to that last really bad day, or that last after an argument with our spouse or someone we're close with, or a manager or coworker. How did I maybe react versus respond to that situation? And when we know how we react to situations, when we know what our automatic reaction is going to be, maybe I had a really bad day at work, so I just reach for that drink when I come home. And that's okay every once in a while, something like that, a reaction. Maybe I slipped up and I lost my temper a little bit and I needed to apologize for something. That's when we have a rupture like that, when we have sort of a reaction, it's okay if we have that and we repair it. It's okay when that's more the exception. But when we know how we will react and want to just have an automatic sort of reaction, we can start to understand how we can respond to our stressors. We can understand maybe a trigger point of, hey, when I'm having a rough day with my boss, maybe that makes me want to grab for a drink when I go home. Maybe that makes me have a couple extra drinks, in terms of previously when people would go to happy hours after work, things of that nature. Understanding what's my reaction, what's my sort of gut instinct to do, and maybe how can I respond to that situation versus reacting to it. Because when we're stuck in sort of states of reaction, I see this time and time again, and this is a little bit more of coming from an addiction standpoint. When we struggle with emotional reactions versus responding, what happens to us is that we start to feel very disempowered within ourselves. We start to feel like, man, another bad day happened, and I just had to have a couple drinks, and now maybe I'm pretty intoxicated, maybe I'm hungover the next day. And when human beings are feeling disempowered or not in regulation or control or influencing their behavior, they really start to feel a lot of shame. Okay. And shame leads to further dysregulation. That's a further stress on our system, because now with shame, now comes hiding, now comes lying, now comes rationalizing all these behaviors to protect this new level of pain that we have. And so, what I really try to help people do in terms of their regulation strategies is helping them understand this little principle here of responding in more of a mindful way versus reacting in sort of more of a mindless way. And I have a lot grounded in terms of a mindfulness-based psychotherapeutic approach in that. And what we want to do sort of after reacting, and what I seek to do as a clinician in terms of self-regulation, is to help people understand, if I'm able to respond mindfully to a situation, okay, here we go. I'm aware that I'm coming home right now. I had a really bad day at work. My boss was on me again, and I really want to reach for that bottle of wine, or that six pack of beer, something like that. But what I work with a lot of people on is, how can I be aware of that moment? What are the signals of distress in my body that are happening right now? Is my body feeling pretty anxious? Am I feeling pretty down? Am I feeling really angry? What's starting to go on that's telling me that I'm starting to I'm going to be reacting to this. I want to avoid this feeling right now. I want this feeling to go away. A very, very natural human behavior. And I help to teach people to catch themselves in that moment and to be able to respond and to say to themselves, okay, if I want to have that drink, maybe I should take a walk for like an hour first. Maybe I should go and maybe have a workout right now. Maybe I should have some time to maybe do some breathing or to read or to have a nice hot bath. And then after that, if I really still want that drink, maybe I'll have just one or two and sort of to take the edge off a little bit. But I'm gonna control that amount that I have so I can wake up tomorrow and feel like, wow, I had a really bad day yesterday, but I didn't sort of slide off the cliff here. I was able to respond and I feel pretty integrated with when stress happens. And I have multiple things I can go to within my environment. And so in understanding our emotional health, I just want us to open this dialogue with ourselves. It's useful to really determine what our issues are, how we think about them, and whether we can even think about them or not, and whether they are affecting us in this present moment. And I want people to really understand that are listening that this is a really hard conversation to have with ourselves. Typically, I see a lot of patients struggling with even talking about what they came to therapy about. There's a lot of shame that's involved with bringing ourselves out into the open, a lot of experimentation that people have with that in terms of coming into therapy. And they understand that I do this all the time. I do this all day, every day. I've seen and heard it all, you know, but with that knowledge, they're still feeling a lot of shame. And so that tells you how powerful that reaction is. That tells you how strong our emotional presentation can be. Even in the presence of a professional, we can still really struggle with just coming to our emotions and how we react or respond to distress. Okay. And so self-regulation strategies, in my approach, I'm not as big on, I'm not going to give you like I'm not going to give you several hundred different coping mechanisms. I'm very focused in the mindfulness approach. I'm more focused on developing a system with self-regulation strategies, helping you understand sort of the map on the basics of our nervous system, helping you develop sort of formal coping strategies, and helping you understand and find like, what do I actually like? What works for me? You would be surprised at how many people try different types of mindfulness meditation, internal focus meditation, external ones, guided meditations, meditating with a loved one or spouse, loving kindness. And it can take some time for that to really click into that space of, oh, I understand this one. This one really speaks to me. There's a lot we can do with that. But what I want people to understand is how can we build up that process with ourselves? How can we build up that sort of understanding of I'm in some distress right now. What I automatically will do is fall off this cliff, sort of normally, these normal reactions. But how can I keep myself up and stable and feel more integrated in terms of how I respond to stressors? That's the generalities, that's the principles I want people to understand over time. And how those details manifest within their environment is completely their journey in finding what they like. So there aren't going to be a lot of super specifics coming from me. We have to drill down to that individual level, and we have to spend some time to really dig in and experiment with what that person likes, really see what calibrates and works for them. But in sort of moving forward from understanding my approach on self-regulation strategies, here's some basics on our nervous system. I'm always talking about this. I really love this, the polyvagal perspective. And it really allows us to understand how our nervous system scans for cues of safety in our environment, something called neuroception. It helps us understand how our nervous system sort of hooks into another person. This is the principle of our sort of our mirror neurons going on. And if we can find these cues of safety within ourselves, within relation to another, and also within our general environment, we're going to be a very well-regulated person if we can find those cues of safety. If we can also find those cues of danger within ourselves in relation and within our environment. That's going to really help us understand, like, like my system is firing right now. Something is happening. Something is telling me that I'm not safe. Why don't I go ahead and respond to the situation and sort of attend and take care of myself right now, so I can ensure that when my body sends a signal, I have a system in place that, oh, okay, I can understand that this signal's here. Oh, I didn't know, like someone is sort of staring at me, maybe out in public. I don't feel very safe right now. Let me move away from this person, and finds a sense of safety and regulation. And sort of to move on from that, we have our parasympathetic system, our sympathetic system, and also our dorsal vagal nerve. And this is called polyvagal theory because our vagus nerve splits off into three different branches in that way. So poly and vagal nerve. And this is a very, very old nerve. Um, we can sort of start at the beginning in terms of our dorsal vagal nerve, sort of shared with reptiles. That's where our freeze response is as human beings. And this is going to be a really short rundown, just so I keep us on time here. But our dorsal vagal nerve, that's a very ancient nerve that we have. That's something that is sort of, we can all see. I described it to a patient this week through like we can all see it. There's this funny video called like the fainting goats. And we can also see that in reptiles. They will freeze and sort of faint death. And so that's a very, very primitive circuit that we have. It takes a lot of energy to enter in and out. And when people are talking about being depressed, they're talking about feeling stuck, feeling hopeless. When we're entering into states of disassociation due to stress being so extreme to the point of trauma, we're talking about our dorsal vagal nerve here. And so, sort of the next set in the evolutionary branch is the sympathetic nervous system. This is with like, I think some higher reptiles. No, I think it's mostly with lower primates, or lower mammals up to higher mammals. But this is our classic fight and flight system. This is the thing that everyone has experienced at some point in their life. A lot of people have experienced some dorsal vagal activation, but our fight and flight system is very well understood by a lot of people. This is very tied to states of anxiety, states of anger, states of rage, states of fear. And so our sympathetic system, that's what's really releasing our adrenals, our cortisol levels, and really see a lot of people getting stuck in that system. And the reason why regulating anxiety is actually a lot easier than people think over time. You can actually do a lot of, you can make a lot of progress with anxiety in a pretty fast way because it's a lot easier to step down from our sympathetic system to our parasympathetic, our rest and digest, the final evolution, than it is to step up and out of our dorsal vagal nerve. But I won't be able to get into that right now. The final branch of our sort of nervous system and how we regulate ourselves and how we seek cues from the environment of safety and danger is our parasympathetic system. Um, and so they think, and this is our ventral vagus nerve, that's associated with that. And so with the ventral vagus nerve, how they feel that was created is because for higher primates, and also just higher mammals in general, or in group-based creatures, for us to be around each other, we need to down-regulate that sympathetic system. We need something to make sure that we're not in the state of fight and flight around each other, so we can co-regulate. We can help each other's systems regulate themselves, but we can also find safety in closeness as well. So if we don't have that parasympathetic system online, when we feel a sense of danger or terror and collapse around others. And knowing, just these are some really big basics. If you want to research more of this, look up on YouTube like Dr. Stephen Porges. Really awesome information and talks on there. It's pretty technical. If people don't like technical, I think you can find a pretty simple books on Amazon about it. But knowing where we are in our nervous system can really help us better identify our needs in that moment and help us what we call state shift. I can identify, I'm in fight and flight, or I'm in my dorsal vagal nerve. I'm in a sense of collapse. What do I need to do to step out of that? I'm up here right now. What do I need to do to calm down? And sort of knowing when we're connected or disconnected from our parasympathetic, our rest and digest, our pro-social place where we're able to like look and greet people, where we're able to make some nice eye contact in a non-threatening manner. We're really able to smile in a genuine way, and we really feel open to others as well. That really lets us know that we're connected in with our parasympathetic system. And there's just a couple cues to help people understand what that feels like. And a really quick way to help us understand is, when have I felt safe or in a sense of trust? We know that system's really online in that. How did I feel in my body? How did I feel in the presence of another? How did I feel in my environment? We can start sort of looking for those clues of what that parasympathetic system is like. So when we're in it, we know what it's like, and when we're out of it, we know what that's like as well. And so some basic coping strategies here, but the basic thing that I want people to understand is this sort of principle is what has made us feel safe, calm, or trusting in the past. So a lot of people find informal coping strategies work out, like sleeping, working out, reading, journaling, emotional writing, taking a walk. And how I define like an informal coping strategy is we just sort of do that. We're not really aware of it. We find that helps maybe, but we're not really intentional about it. And so a more formal coping strategy that we can think about is anything we really do intentionally or consciously in relation to stress or disconnection. So that walk can be a lot different if we have some attention behind it. That walk can become a completely different dynamic. It's a very restorative activity. A lot of things like yin yoga are very good for maybe if we need a restorative response or something calmer on our nervous system. Maybe if we need something to lift us up, maybe out of that dorsal vagal, maybe getting into some exertion states are better for us, like lifting weights, hip workouts, running, or sprinting. Meditation, I'm really big on regulating through meditation and sort of starting to move into this regulating in relation theme, really being able to connect with a loved one or trusted other, or being able to connect with memories that are very positive. Or if you decide to come into individual therapy, we do things like creating a safe and calm place and strengthening that association with what's called bilateral stimulation. We create an internal ally that is strengthened with bilateral stimulation. These things, these resources that we can develop within ourselves. And so by bringing in an intention or a conscious attitude, we're able to develop new associations with distress and responses to distress. The biggest thing I see in like someone who's securely attached to a trusted other or loved one is that even though they're in distress, they feel a sense of safety. They feel like, okay, I feel really stressed out, or this really bad thing happened right now. But in the end, I know I'm okay because this person will accept me in wherever I'm at and whatever I'm going through. And I know that what happened is not going to jeopardize my relationship with that person. And so the real struggle point there, and where a lot of shame and hiding comes, is if, oh man, I didn't get that grade, let's say a child, and they try to hide it from their parents. That's a really big red flag for me because that's telling me that this child is at a place of fear. They're at such a place of fear that they cannot tell their parent in a safe manner that this thing happened. They fear that their relationship with them is in jeopardy. And so, since we are such interdependent creatures, and we've only been living in this modern world for not very long, if we did not respond to shame signals in the past, we either face death or banishment, or we'd be banished and probably death closely thereafter. So a feeling of shame is so strong, and why it's such a powerful driver of behavior is because what comes next, to our nervous system. If I don't, this is sort of my last thing I got right here, to push this person back towards the group, push this person back towards a sense of safety in that way. And if I have to split off parts of myself to get that result, that is what I will do. And so that is a very adaptive survival strategy that oftentimes is very, very confused with our modern understanding because we are hardwired in the same exact way as we used to be from living in um, agrarian and pre-agrarian societies. So these things are still very powerful within our lives. And so I think to wrap this slide up is just to start asking ourselves to prepare us for regulating and relation is, what do you like? What do you actually like when you're in that moment of, I'm in a moment of distress? We can look to a previous example in that, but do I like solutions? Do I like an empathetic ear? Do I like physical touch? Do I like eye contact, tone of voice? Do I just want someone who's open, who's going to be there for me? This can be anything, but it's important to find out those specific details for yourself in that to really help us understand in a conscious way what is helpful for me so I can then communicate what is helpful and affirm that other person for what is helpful. And so we need to start with us starting to understand, okay, what is actually helpful for me when I'm with another person, when I'm sitting with another person, when I'm calling somebody. Do I need to vent? Do I need advice? Do I need a story? Do I need some motivation? What is actually helpful for me? And now we can start identifying who is this helpful person or people. Who are these people, or who is this person that's going to be able to help me? A trusted spouse, friend, family member. What is helpful about this person? I really want people to ask themselves these questions. In terms of a trusted spouse, family member, some further questions are, how has this person earned your trust? How do I know that I'm safe with them? How do you know that they will not hurt you if you talk about something difficult? What are the examples of that in the past? And we can understand sort of states of vulnerability, which I'm going to talk about at the end of this slide as well. But vulnerability is not something that we should just give away and just be vulnerable. That's actually called, I think, that's actually called floodlighting or spotlighting when we've probably all been around one person in our life that they're coming off very, very strong and they're giving very, very personal details. And that feels like a whole lot because this person doesn't understand that sort of dance that happens with friendships over time of, we start talking a little bit and we learn a little bit more about each other. Maybe we work with each other. Maybe we see each other go through a bit of a hard time and we slowly can be a little bit more vulnerable and build some trust up over time. And so someone who is helpful to us has earned our trust over time. They have sort of taken our secrets or our vulnerability and they've held them for us. They made us feel safe with that. They've affirmed us for it. And they also have not used these or weaponized these things against us in maybe a difficult moment or arguing. That is an extreme rupture that we can see, especially that can really take root in long-term friendships and in spousal relationships as well. You really see someone's vulnerability being weaponized against them at some point, and that is just extremely damaging to the relationship and takes a long time and a lot of effort to come back from. And so we know, we're starting to ask ourselves these questions of who is helpful, understanding why they're helpful a little bit more, understanding that trust and vulnerability is sort of this dance that happens over time, and asking ourselves this question, okay, I have this person maybe in my mind, or maybe I struggle to find a person. Maybe it's a person from my past. Maybe it's a person, an imaginary person right now. But what is helpful about them? I just want you to think about what are some of the things they do that are helpful to you in vulnerability? How does this person make you feel inside? When you are coming to them, how are you feeling in anticipation? Are you already feeling a little bit safe? Are you feeling unsure? During this difficult moment in conversation, how are they making you feel? What's their body language like? What's their tone of voice? What's their eye contact like? Little details like this are very important for our signals of safety. And how am I feeling after the talk? Am I feeling like, oh man, that was just like way too much? Or am I feeling like, hey, like this person really sees me, they understand, I know things about them as well. and they're really helping me understand that this happens to a lot of people. It's very common, and not to really worry about it that much. And so these are just some clues and some questions to how we can look for cues of safety in relation, how we can make that more explicit, and how we can communicate like, hey, when you just maybe held my hand in that hard moment, or when you maybe just held me and told me it was going to be okay. Wow, that made me feel awesome. Can you do that again? I really like that. And you're also affirming them and saying, like, hey, I appreciate you. Thank you so much that you really affected me in a positive way. Something that's strengthening the bond even further, because people like to know what helps a lot of times. People like to know that they're being helpful and that they have a really positive effect. And so if you have a very positive relationship, that person will probably look to like, yes, I will do that next time. And that actually, when you come to me, that doesn't feel overwhelming. I feel really good afterwards because I know I'm hitting these buttons that I know are going to work for you, that are tried and true. And I know I can sort of go to those things that help you regulate in the best way. And so here are a couple of points as well on moving forward in terms of benefits of co-regulation. Oh wow, we're already at 6:41. Okay, so I'll move us along here. The benefits of co-regulation are sort of being able to show our deepest self. When we are vulnerable and in distress, and we're met with kindness, compassion, understanding, caring, we're really allowing someone to see us in a very hard moment, a moment that all human beings experience. And if that person is able to hold that moment, they're sort of able to hold um, our heart in their hand and not hurt it, not sort of squish it there, or not use that against us later. What a sense of trust and closeness that brings. What a different association we have with distressful moments. If I can see a person that is and people, this happens, I call it sort of having a good problem in assessments. When you don't have that much to talk to me about, if you're pretty well regulated, if you're able to come to other people in your life, I'm giving you a big thumbs up and saying like, yes, I don't think you need to see me, you're really doing great, it sounds like. um, so with this validation of our state, we are feeling seen, and we're feeling really connected with another. Our nervous system is actually attuning to theirs. Their nervous system is actually sort of holding ours and helping to bring us down and to help us sort of find this place of regulation and safety. So it has a lot more to do with just the emotions, the body. And a lot of it has to do with our actual how we're looking, if how much we're showing our teeth, our ability to smile and to show an authentic presence. These little details are very, very important. So if you're seeing things that you like in another, if they're earning your vulnerability and trust, help to point that out, because this sort of helps to synergize that process. You can know who to come to. They can know that they're helpful, and that creates a very, very powerful relationship with another person that's willing and able to take that moment on, that sort of energy demand from you to help you regulate and feel better and closer together. And so we all need to understand as well, with like all those great pieces of vulnerability, of what are the limits of this, um, and sort of knowing what works for you and developing these awareness around the basics. So we don't know. A big reason why I put this point in the slide, is that we can't know what our limits are if we don't know what works. If we don't have a plan, if we don't have some basic understandings of, okay, I at least know if I have a stressful day that I should probably maybe at least take a walk, at least connect with one person that I love, and maybe read something, and then move into more pleasurable activities after that. If we have a plan, we can know the limits of that plan. We can know what it works for, what it doesn't work for, and maybe when we need to step into higher states or more deeper states of co-regulation. And so we also need to know the limits of co-regulation as well. Um, what a good thing to understand about these moments is that there, like I said before, there's a very, very high energy demand. What I do for a living, day in and day out, it takes a lot. So it takes a lot of emotional energy. It takes a lot of attention. It takes a lot of helping people brace with their emotions. I'm dealing with people and working with people who are in a very acute distress in front of me every day. And it almost makes me joke with people. Like I see people cry every day. Like this isn't that big of a deal for me, but it's still, is an energy demand. And therapists talk a lot about, hey, like, what do you do for self care? What are the things that work for you? How do you keep yourself from having what we call compassion fatigue? So understand that even with the professionals, this causes a lot of load, and I need to do a lot of specific things in my lifestyle to make sure I'm showing up and I'm okay and I'm able to take on this challenge. And so we need to understand that for a person who is living more of, let's say, a more common or normal lifestyle, we need to respect their resources. We need to maybe ask them some questions about, is it okay if I come to you again this week? How are you feeling right now? Are you able to take this on? Do I need to maybe wait? Do I need to rely more on my self regulation right now? We need to be able to respect their resources that they have so they're not getting overwhelmed right now. We need to know these limits of co-regulation, asking where they're at, maybe even starting to see some signs. People have probably seen this a lot. If you think about this a little bit, if you see there's signs of disconnection, when was there a time where I was trying to be vulnerable with this trusted person, but then I learned later that, man, they were really stressed out and they were really struggling. Maybe we could see like they were pulling away a little bit, or their eye contact was shifting. Maybe they were starting to pick up their phone a little bit or wanting to move away from the conversation. Maybe their tone was a little bit more closed off and their word choices were a little bit quicker or more curt. We can start to know, when is someone disconnected from me and they're not really able to hold this right now. Because if the person isn't understanding where they're at, and if you're not understanding where you are at and they're at, we can have this big collision point of this person sort of unknowingly, the person who's sort of holding and helping to regulate can feel overwhelmed and they can want to disconnect from that sort of energy demand. That can be a fight, that can be blaming it on that person or putting it back on them. Maybe they feel overwhelmed or vulnerable themselves when someone comes to them with something hard. Maybe they don't feel worthy in those moments with themselves. So we need to understand that this is not an infinite resource. This is a finite resource that needs to be respected. And to help people understand as well, because I see this a lot, that if someone's tired, that's different than hurting them. When you're talking with someone who's close to you, a lot of times they really want to help you, but they're probably just tired. It doesn't mean that you're hurting them as a person. It just means they might not have enough energy right now, and that if they understand that you were trying to respect their boundaries, they're going to probably try to recover, or they're going to probably try to set a time where maybe you can talk about that difficult thing with them. So just understanding, what our limits are. Um, what are the limits of my plan? Asking ourselves some questions around that. Do I have a plan? Do I have an awareness about what I need to work on, what works for me? Do I need to make a plan right now? Do I need to sit down and maybe write some of this down? That's always very, very helpful to be able to get it on the paper. And so knowing our limits, knowing who to go to, what to go to them with, when, um, and also some basic self-regulation skills we're talking about today. Okay, moving on. I might cut some slides due to time here, but just some general benefits. We're going to start concluding here of psychotherapy is that psychotherapy is like the ultimate place to have an experienced guide of sort of our emotional and relational environment. We're able to learn from within, and we're able to really regain or strengthen ourselves through this process. Usually, we find ourselves in more of a disintegrated place when we're coming into therapy. And a lot of therapy is about integrating all these stressors that brought us in and consolidating us into more of a cohesive whole. And individual therapy, especially, I'm a big proponent of the relational style. That's like one of the main components of my therapeutic approach. Individual therapy is the ultimate place to come for co regulation. I'm helping your nervous system regulate. I'm a welcoming and kind person. I'm conscious of the cues of safety. I'm very conscious of someone's experimentation with that. I'm very, very conscious of not bringing somebody too deep, into their stuff if they don't have that level of trust for me, or maybe if that they're just not feeling if they don't have that amount of energy to go into that place. I'm very, very attuned to those situations, and I have a lot of experience with that. And so understand that coming to individual therapy is a great place. If we don't have that person in our relational environment, or maybe we just don't want to talk about what we're going through. Maybe we want our spouse to be someone who's like, yes, I do have a TBI, I do have an autoimmune issue. I don't want to talk to them about this every single day. Maybe I want to talk to them about this once a week. I can come into integrated health systems, put this all with Jake this week, talk about it with Dr. Stem and Dr. Perry, sort of get this all out so I can go and just be me for the rest of the week here. So understand that regulating in relation in the individual therapeutic environment, that's the place to go for it. And excuse me, something in my throat there. Um, but to come on in and sign up for a consult if you feel like this is something that resonates with you, or maybe have that conversation with a loved one if you feel like they could really use some help with co-regulating and also regulation with themselves as well. And so in the conclusion, I usually have the same slide of, I'm very frank about our emotional health and how important that is. I have some pretty strong beliefs of we can and we should improve our emotional well-being, because the stronger we can become in that space, the more we can help other people, the less that resistant points in our life can really knock us off track and make us feel disempowered. But not everyone does it, because this is really hard, and it's hard because it is. It's very, very difficult for us to have that level of trust with another person. Um, it's just really funny to me. Again, I do this day in and day out. It makes you have a very non-judgmental attitude when you hear so many people's stories. But it's very hard for people to come in and share their story with someone like me. Even in such a safe environment, even in an environment that is specifically set up for the safety, it is so hard for people to come in. So it always surprises me, and that's always something I respect a lot of someone who's coming in with their problems. I have a ton of respect for them, because it's so hard to find the time, the resources, and just the emotional energy, and to have the courage to really come to your own issues. And so we're on Your Health Matters on Mondays at 12:30 with the great Scott Watley. You catch me, Dr. Stedman, Dr. Maynard. Dr. Trink is on there as well, and I think we'll have some more practitioners coming on there from the office as well in the future. And telehealth is available through these times. If people don't feel comfortable coming in person, or if they feel like, maybe I can make a session every couple weeks, but I'm going to need to flex and do telehealth, that's easily and readily available in integrated health systems. And to just call in for a free 30-minute consultation if needed. Here's the number listed here, and also to click the link in the chat for a free 30-minute consultation. You'll actually be able to schedule it right there through the link. Welcome any consultations, even if it's like questions or concerns, or hopefully not concerns about the webinar tonight. Any questions or curiosities, if you just want to make a connection, totally be great to talk to you, and we'll get a time in there for you. So thank you all so much for joining me this evening. I'll conclude us here. Went a little bit over my planned time. But this will also be posted on through the Integrated Health Systems platform as well. So you all have a great evening, and have a happy Halloween from this lonesome cowboy. All right, last cowboy reference there. All right, you all take care. Bye-bye.